Hello and good evening, listeners. Welcome to our weekly English program. Listeners, did you know that Mumbai was once a city of forests where panthers roamed, or that Stone Age people still inhabit the Andaman coast, fiercely guarding its untamed forests? Did you know that the snow leopards are more commonly called the grey coast of the Himalayas, or that the crystal clear waters around Lakshadweep Islands are bustling with mystical creatures? The India that most of us come across every day is sadly contained within the boundaries of our cities. Often the pot-hole urban streets, corner grocery shop, and our office cubicle make up our world. It is especially the next generation born and brought up in this urban world that is tragically left unaware of nature and its myriad mysteries. But one author has notably, for the past 16 years, taken up the arduous task of bringing nature and adventure into our lives through his books, the Vikramaditya Adventure Series. Today, in our program Kaleidoscope, we have an interview with Deepak Dalal, a writer, traveler, and naturalist who has since 1998 given young Indian readers a brilliant portrayal of our nation's biodiversity. In a fast-paced adventure story revolving around two teenagers, Vikram and Aditya. Deepak Dalal is as much an adventurer himself as his central characters. He can often be found trekking the length and breadth of the country. Even the Sahyadri Hills of Pune are a short journey from his home. Opening up about his books and personal life, here is a conversation with Deepak Dalal by Gaurav Shimpi, exclusively for All India Radio, Pune.
Hello and good evening, listeners. Today we have with us Deepak Dalal, a writer who himself is a trekker and a wildlife enthusiast, who likes to absorb the natural world into his books. His books are written for young readers at their most impressionable age. The books have a fantastic, engrossing style that can engage children as well as make them appreciate the importance of nature and wildlife. Welcome, Deepak, to All India Radio Studios. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Gaurav. Pleasure to be here.
Deepak, let's start this interview from your growing up years. How were you as a kid? What are the incidents or events that maybe have shaped you in becoming the Deepak Dalal that is today?
Well, to start with, I loved reading. I loved books,
Okay.
and I used to read them endlessly. My mom used to get so upset because I wouldn't go to bed. In fact, she would put off all the lights and I'd take a torch and go under the bed and I would read. And so, yeah, books were a very important part of my life. Any kind of books. You know, in those days, of course, there was Enid Blyton, then all kinds of adventure books. I liked adventure in particular. And if it had anything to do with wildlife, that was even more interesting for me. And I would just lap up those kind of books. And I went to a boarding school. I'm from Bombay originally.
Okay.
And I went to a boarding school. And that boarding school was in South India, near Ooty. And there, from being a Bombay wala to suddenly go to a place where you have 750 acres of school property and forests and hills and mountains, I think that place shaped my love for the outdoors and wildlife and trekking, and I think that really was the impressionable years, and that impression really went deep inside me.
Okay.
So yeah, that was the time, and I think that's what shaped me as a person. The school, the place, the location, the kind of books I was reading left a very deep impression of what I enjoyed and loved most.
Not many of our listeners know that you are actually a son of the celebrity chef Tarla Dalal.
That is true. Yes,
Yeah.
that
So
was
there
my
was
mom.
some great food at home.
Oh yeah, the food was just outstanding. And the thing is, because I was in a boarding school, I used to miss it for those 8 months I was in the school.
Oh.
But when I came back, my mom would go overboard. And that was the beauty of it. She just fed and fed. It was lovely food. I mean, yeah, those were happy days getting mom's food.
So when you were in your boarding school in Ooty, were there any incidents that thought of bunking your school and going on an adventure into the forest?
Well, we used to bunk regularly in the sense that we would, because the school was near Ooty, it was about 6 kilometers away, but it was in this forested little location, secluded area. So, we always loved to go to town, and so we used to bunk at night, and we used to call it bunking, and we used to actually step out of the window, go out from the back and reach Ooty, see a movie and come back. Okay. So we used to do a lot of that. There were a lot of adventures like that. I particularly remember climbing a lot of mountains there. I just found myself drawn to going to these forested zones where nobody was there and reaching the top and enjoying the view and enjoying the walk and the struggle to reach the top. And I think in those days the hills just drew me. And I didn't realize it at that time, but when I look back on it, I see that I started my trekking there, and nobody else would do what I would do. I would be out all the time, leaving the campus and going up somewhere, or just exploring, and so that was built into me at that age, I believe.
Who were your friends at that time? Who you used to travel with? Like in these adventures, you always need some part.
I used to pick up whoever came. Sometimes it used to be a good friend who was a reader himself.
Okay.
A young man, now he's of course my age, Anil Warner. We were together from Bombay. We used to come to the school, and we used to just read and exchange books all the time. So he would come for me on certain walks. Okay. Some other friends would come, but it was never really anybody in particular. I used to just hook off, and that's the way it was. I would love to have somebody along, but if they didn't come, I would go on my own. Yeah, I mean, that's the way it comes to trekking. I mean, when I'm cycling or if I'm moving around, it's great to have friends, but if they're not there, that's not going to halt me.
Yeah. Great. So actually you found friends in the nature itself at that particular time. Yeah?
Well, yeah, the solitude, just being up there in these places where nobody else goes, I think that's a wonderful feeling,
Yes.
It's just you and this space and the trees and the forests and the view of the mountains, the birds. I learned the beauty of just being on your own in these places right back then, and today I long for places like that. Where I can just be by myself and just me and nature and tucked away in some secluded corner.
So at this particular moment of time in your life, there was no idea you were going to be a writer or you want to write something about this experience?
No, but I love books, and I did get the vaguest kind of hints that I would love to have written something as nice as this. I mean, I liked it so much that I wish I had the ability to do that.
Yes.
So, and I did, of course, as a kid, try to write something, and it was absolutely horrible, and I should give up after a page.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just one of those.
So at that particular time, you tried writing.
Yeah, but it was pathetic attempts. You know what I mean? I had no clue what I was doing, and so it kind of evaporated in those days. But yeah, it did come that this is what I love, and I wish I could do something as nice as this. Create something as nice as this.
Okay. So life in Ooty, it was till your 12th?
Yes, till the 12th, and then I came back to Mumbai, and then I studied for a while in Mumbai. Then I went to the US to do my chemical engineering, which I think was a big mistake. I should have studied English literature like you, but that would have given me a head start in writing, frankly. But I wasted my first few years as an engineer. I worked about 15 years in the industry, and I found that I wasn't reading engineering journals, instead I was picking up wildlife journals. So all my time I spent trying to go to wildlife places. I traveled to the Himalayas. I started discovering India. I traveled to Rajasthan, I traveled to the Northeast, to the Andaman Islands. And
so this particular time when you were in US for your chemical engineering, did it help to find you more? Because people say that when they go outside their own country, that is when they almost completely relook at their own country or where they come from. So was it the similar experience for you?
I enjoyed my trekking there for the natural landscapes out there. I enjoyed them for what they were, and they're really beautiful. I mean, America is a huge country. I mean, 4 times the size of India and 1/4 the population of India. So you can imagine, there are lots of empty spaces and very beautifully kept national parks and things like that. So I enjoyed America for what it was. It was a different landscape, more cold, more snow, more ice, but beautiful mountains, beautiful rivers, absolutely total solitude, beautiful places.
Yeah.
India is different. I mean, India is wonderful in its own way. I mean, we've got 8,000 kilometers of coastlines. It's a small country, okay,
Yes.
8,000 kilometers of coastline, coral islands, pure coral islands, which you could find in the Pacific Seas, right here in the Lakshadweep Islands are coral islands. And you got the Andaman Islands. You got tropical rainforests. You got deciduous forests. You've got high alpine forests. You got montane forests. You have rivers like the Brahmaputra, the Ganges. You have the Western Ghats. You have the deserts of Rajasthan. You have Ladakh, which is actually part of the Tibetan plateau, and it's a cold, frozen desert. I mean, what wonderful different geographies bunched into just one country.
Yes.
It's amazing. And that's what actually
Absolutely.
prompted me to write. Nobody knew about these places. I mean, in those days, what do we know of Ladakh?
Right.
Today people go.
Yes.
Andaman Islands, how many of us have been
Yeah.
there? Lakshadweep Islands, just a handful of us have
Right.
been there. These beautiful rivers, these forests, they are great places for selling stories.
After completing your chemical engineering course, you came back here in India, and then you were working in an engineering sector.
Yes.
And for how many years did this happen?
Too many years.
Yeah. What was your routine like at that particular time? And what was your mindset before you started writing?
So my mindset was, why am I wasting my time
Okay.
in these places? And I used to feel, gosh, another day wasted, in the sense that my mind was elsewhere, and here I was in this factory or pursuing some sales assignment somewhere, when my thoughts were far away. The thing about writing books was taking seed in my head at that time, and I'd rather be doing that than be working and doing. And so I was caught up. Every day I wanted to write and travel, but I had to do something else. And so this went on for too long, and then finally I took the big step. I wrote my Lakshadweep book while I was still working, but once that started moving, then I decided, okay, I just want to write. And that's when I actually got into writing more full-time than and work just became once in a while. I used to take assignments just to keep going.
Okay. So you started writing in 1990.
Yeah, because I'd gone to Lakshadweep Island in 1990. So, and I went back in 91.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's when I got my story going.
Okay.
But it just lay around for a long time.
Okay.
I had to work. And
So how was this writing as an experience for the first time? Like, how did Lakshadweep adventure really happen?
And you see, Lakshadweep was one big adventure. We really had an adventure because, I mean, we used to windsurf in these Khadakwasa Lake in controlled conditions. Here you were out on the open sea. I mean, you were up 20 feet, the waves and the swell, and then you were down 30 the next moment, and there was this wind, and there was, and if you fell, there was 10,000 feet of water below you with eels and sharks and barracuda and jellyfish and all kinds of, So it was quite a different experience. And then, of course, living with the locals, going fishing with them. And we actually made friends with the locals. We lived in their homes. We went scuba diving with them. We went fishing with them. And I saw Lakshadweep in a very different way, which I had ever imagined it to be as a kid living in India.
Oh.
And that's when I said, I need to set a story here.
Okay.
That's my first book, Lakshadweep Adventure, came out of that particular trip.
Oh. Yeah,
That's how it was. So writing it in a realistic manner wasn't difficult because I'd really experienced what I was writing about. So the story came quite naturally from there.
Okay.
So
Yes. People refer to your books as the Vikramaditya series.
that is correct.
Yes. So how did you arrive at your this pet characters of Vikramaditya?
Good question. You see, I've always wanted to be what Vikram is. In the sense that he is level-headed, he's intelligent,
Yes.
he is brave, he's capable. That kind of person who just assures people that with if I'm here, all will go well.
Yes.
And so that's the character I'd love to be, which I'm not. All right.
Okay.
Aditya was the exact opposite of, they say opposites attract.
Yes.
And this is the case where Aditya is driven by the moment, the thought of that moment, and he would just go and do it. And whatever was on his mind, he would just go ahead and figure out, and the consequences later on. Break rules, But still, he loves wildlife also, and he loves adventure. And so
Okay.
these two very opposing people are best of friends, and wherever they go together.
Yes.
So it was like two opposing personalities. That's what really what it was all about. One
Okay.
complementing the other,
Okay.
who happened to be best of friends.
Okay.
And that's how these two characters came about. Yeah, and I think it worked out okay. you know.
Yeah, it is. It's brilliant. So, how did you settle down on this Vikramaditya being continued in the next book as well? How was that decision taken?
Well, if you notice, all the successful books in children's, I mean, which have stayed a long time, are
Yes.
essentially series stories. Whether it's Secret Seven, Famous Five, the adventure series books which Enid Blyton wrote, or Harry Potter today, what happens, children, once you establish characters, they want to know more about them.
Right.
And they associate with them. So if you put them through more and more books, it's like a familiar scene each time, and you keep going back to familiar characters, and I think children, I'm pretty sure children actually this is the way they want it.
Yes.
And it works. The series works. With kids, it works. It might not work with adults, but for
Right.
kids, series is an important thing.
So, listeners, you were listening to the first part of an interview with Deepak Dalal, a children's book writer, by Gaurav Shimpi. Do tune in next week, Wednesday, same time, for the second and final part of this interview. Until then, thanks for listening, and please stand by for our next program, which follows shortly.